Hello and welcome to episode 29 of the TRUUMAN Podcast, the podcast designed to create a generation of self-defined men. Today, I'm joined by Andy Bishop. Andy, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for inviting me, Lewis. It's great to be here. It's 29 episodes, mate. That's brilliant.
Thank you. Every time I say a bigger number, I get more excited. So it's great that we've got this far. And with the previous 28 episodes, I'll start as I always do. Andy, in your own words, what makes you a man?
God, that's a massive question, isn't it? Massive question. I think that's changed for me over the years. When I was a young man, what I thought a man was totally different to how I think now. I'm 53 years old now, so yeah, so much goes into it, doesn't it? So much that goes into being a man, especially in today's modern age. I think today, being a man is all about being comfortable with who you are and what you're doing, I think.
Short and sweet, but I like that you touched on that it's changed over the years as well. I think that's the main purpose of the question, right? Is to ask it to yourself a lot so that you can understand where you are at each point in your life and sort of make a decision from there. So yeah, Andy, in sort of your own words, what is it that you do in the space?
So I found myself in working in the kind of the men's world and the mental health space in 2017. I think it really started to kind of kick off. I'd kind of been dipping my toe in the water a little bit over the preceding couple of years. So the way I found myself in this space, I got diagnosed with depression back in 2004, something like that. At the time, I was working in a man's world. I was in the military. 2004. It's only 20 years ago, but it was a different world when it came to the conversations that we're having today. And I gave that depression diagnosis a good stiff ignoring because that's the way I'd been brought up. Depression wasn't a thing that happened to men like me, especially not in the military. All of the people I'd learned off had never spoken about mental health. So I carried that forward. Fast forward all the way through to 2017. I've been out of the military for 5 years. I've been through a suicide attempt myself where I couldn't adjust to civilian life. And I was really was struggling with everything that life was throwing at me. That was in 2012. And then 2017, I burnt out and broke down because I was still wearing this mask. I was still being this man that I thought I had to be. I thought that everybody else wanted to be rather than the man that I am. And then I found myself off work for 6 months with this burnout and breakdown, right bang in the middle of that period. I lost one of my oldest, closest and dearest friends to suicide. And that old, close, dear friend had pretty much the same upbringing as me. We'd served in the military for a long time together, and we were pretty much the same people. So, yeah, that's when I really started not going to town on, but sharing stories and talking about mental health and well-being at any opportunity.
Amazing. Well, thanks for sharing that, and obviously, sorry to hear about your friend as well in that scenario. It's never a nice thing, especially when it's so close to home as well. Can you sort of go into a little bit more detail about why you think the military wasn't as equipped as it maybe is now?
So the military, I think it was equipped. I think we had the pastoral care in place. The pastoral care was there certainly when, in my own experience, going through promotions and on every kind of promotion course, we touch on well-being all the way through my career. But there's a massive stigma in the military about using those services. So every military unit has the pastoral care with the padre. There's generally a women's Royal Volunteer Service kind of thing. There's usually some form of pastoral care available on camp for all the single soldiers. There's clubs and things like that. But then there's a stigma around going to them. There's a massive stigma around going and engaging in the services that these places offer. It certainly was during my time. What a lot of the places used to do was become little cafes, and the blokes would use them as somewhere to go and hide because of that stigma, because they knew that their seniors wouldn't be going in there. It was somewhere they could go and escape from the hierarchy, if you like, but not necessarily to use the services that were on offer.
Okay. And what is it that you're doing now that you think is allowing people to maybe break down that stigma?
So I start to sound a little bit almost egotistical here. I'm a big fella. I'm 53 years old. I've got no hair. I've got a massive beard. I'm covered in tattoos. I've got an ex-military background. I ride a big, massive motorbike. If you're going to draw a bloke, it's going to be somebody that looks like me, especially if you put the word tough in front of it.
Yeah.
And I regularly get up, and this is how I kind of found my way into what I do with the Man Gang. Is I tell people my story. I tell people what my story was, but I also tell them the later chapters and how I get on with life now. And I think what I do there, along with a number of other people that I'm incredibly humble to work with, I think what we do is we break down that perception, because we present that image, and the judgment people have of us when we appear is usually formed within the first 3 or 4 seconds, and then we smash that image. We smash it everywhere. And I think that's part of the hidden kind of, I'm not going to say talent. I'm just going to think, I think it's maybe we're good at breaking stigma. And everybody's got that power, because nobody knows what's going on beyond the smile, right?
Yeah. Well, the smile is the best disguise, most definitely. It's not. It's usually the happiest person, right, that needs to speak the most as well. Is something that I found most definitely. Would you say that you talking about this as you described yourself as a typical manly man, have you been met with any backlash, or what have you been met with as you started to talk with it from the general public rather than specifically the groups that you've been working with?
Oh, do you know what? From the general public, so there's some great. I've got some great anecdotes about when we first set up the Man Gang, and the resistance that we got to the Man Gang, mainly to the name, the Man Gang. Apparently, it in certain people it promotes images of violence, and it promotes images of loads and loads of negative stuff. But yeah, I get a lot of, I still do get quite a little bit of negative feedback about the name and about the colours that we've chosen to use. When we kind of, this is an example of it. So the spaces that we've created, and I know for a fact that guys that are involved in those spaces, they won't have any problems with me saying this. These spaces that we've created, they're that safe and free from judgment. We've had no less than 3 people actually come out around their sexuality. They haven't even spoken to their families about it yet. They can sit in these groups of men, because there is absolutely no judgment there, and open up for the first time about their sexuality, and then go on and be just improve on a daily basis. So we obviously support things like LGBTQ Awareness Month. We support Pride and things like that, and we get a lot of backlash for that, which I don't get it. I really don't get it at all. To be living in a world where people are persecuted just for being in love, it's just not right.
Yeah, it's bizarre that there's a conversation around men needing to talk more, and then when these spaces are created, that they are perceived as negative or creating toxic masculinity or promoting violence, as you said in your scenario. It's bizarre. And what would your message be to someone that maybe thinks that from the surface looking in on it?
Just come along and have a look. Come and join in. Come and have a chat. If you, and it's natural for people to be scared going into this environment. It's not something that we as men are good at. You get that little kind of bit of anxiety, maybe a little bit of fear about going into a new situation. And that's that we make all our events and everything that we do as accessible as possible. So we take it in stages. The first stage is normally a phone call, and we kind of not thrive, but we really go to town on the confidentiality, because without the confidentiality, I don't think these groups can work. So we don't even ask people's names. So I'll take a phone call that I'll tell them my name if I'm speaking on the phone, but we don't ask theirs. We might ask what area of the country they live in, so that we can send them to the closest group. That's as far as it'll go. And if they want to turn up and say their name's John Smith, that's absolutely fine. And then we wait outside. There's no pressure to come in
Yeah.
and to talk. And that's one of the biggest questions that we get is, do I have to do anything? Just show up. Is it okay if I sit in the corner and just listen? That's absolutely fine. 9 times out of 10, the people that say that, you can't shut them up by after they've got in there for the first 5 or 10 minutes. But it always starts, their conversation and the stuff they're talking about, it always starts with, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I'm talking about this to a bunch of strangers. But then we've got a question at the end of their kind of dialogue, and the end of the evening is, how are you feeling now?
Yeah.
And it's always better. They always feel better for that little offload.
Amazing. So where are you based? What locations are you based in at the moment?
So we're not massive. We're not a massive organisation. We're only in Hampshire at the moment, so around the Southampton area. We've got a few groups around Southampton, Eastleigh, Winchester, and Romsey. So yeah, just a few groups there. We got quite a big reach. I mean, during lockdown, when we were on these kind of platforms all the time, we were reaching all around the world. We had guys coming in every other day, almost literally from all over the world, all over Europe, US, Canada, Mexico. Yeah, there was people coming from everywhere. It was brilliant, amazing thing to be part of.
Yeah, super amazing. In your opinion, why is it that when men get together, it's a lot easier, like that stranger, even if it's a stranger, why do you think men are open to have these conversations in those rooms and maybe not have them with a partner or a family member?
I think you've touched on it there. It's the stranger thing, isn't it? It's the power of talking to strangers. You can't underestimate that. I mean, how many times have you been in a taxi on the way back from somewhere? A couple of pints, inhibition's gone a little bit, and you start that conversation with a taxi driver, knowing that you're probably never going to see him again. That taxi driver's facing the same way as you. He's taking you to your destination. Therefore, he's seen to be on your side, and I think that's part of the attraction. You're not going to get negative judgment from strangers if they're there for the same reason. So yeah, it's like magic. It is absolutely like magic.
I imagine it's quite addictive for you, right? Like the seeing it sort of unfolding and seeing people opening up.
It is. It's quite strange as well, because it can be very painful as well at times. It can be very emotionally draining at times. But then all it takes is one person just to say, "Oh, thank you." Or I remember one of the first letters of gratitude that I ever received, and it was from a chap's mum. And all she wrote, she sent me a little card, and it just said, "Thank you for giving me my son back." And I was blown away by that. Absolutely blown away. In fact, she actually came in and hand delivered that card. That's quite a funny story. We had 2 football legends from the Southampton area. In fact, 3 football legends. So Laurie McMenemy, the giant, I don't know if you've ever come across him, giant football manager, big Geordie fellow. He was an ex-guardsman as well, so it gives you an idea of the size of him.
Yeah.
So there's him, Francis Benali, who's he spent a lifetime, his whole career at Southampton. So he's a bit of a Southampton legend. And Mark Dennis, the original Psycho, before Stuart Pearce came on the scene. So the 3 of them are in the cafe, and I was chatting to Laurie McMenemy, and he was asking me about about some of the similar questions. So you've been asking me today, Lewis, and then this little old lady came in, and it's in a cafe, in a coffee shop. There's plenty of cake and snacks and everything all around, and she had this little tray of savoury goods. And she's like, "Where's Andy? Where's Andy?" And she didn't care who I was talking to. She just barged these people out of the way like they were nobody, and she said, "These are for you." And that's where she gave me the little card that said, "Thank you for giving me my son back." And it was like such a special moment.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it's amazing, right? Do you feel you get more praise from partners and family members, or is it equal?
It's probably a 50-50 split. Yeah, you get we do get gratitude from the people that those men matter to, but the gratitude from the men themselves as well. It's always. And do you know what? There's one of the things I said about changing and stuff. That's one of the things that I never used to be able to take those kind of compliments and those little acts of gratitude. I always used to say, "Oh, well, yeah, all I've done is create a space. It's you boys that have done all the magic." But then this chap sat me down, and he's one of our facilitators now. He's a chap called Eric, and he said, "Andy," he said, "if I gave you a Rolex watch," he said, "if I slid that across the table for you and said that's a gift for you, what would you say?" I say, "Oh, thank you." He said, well, why do you do that? Why do you downplay it? Why do you say, oh, it's not me? Why do you deflect that gratitude when people give you gratitude about what you're doing and about the man gang and stuff like that? And it was really was a valid point. It really was a valid point. I think we're as a human race, we're not very good at taking compliments, are we, and taking that gratitude. But nowadays, just a simple thank you is reciprocal enough, you know.
Yeah, it's I think I I get messages now saying thank you for the podcast and things like that, and it's still a bit surreal that one, people are listening, and two, that people are getting enough from it that they can reach out and say it. So yeah, I sort of get where you come from with the getting the thanks. Can I talk to you about the word mental health? What is your view on that terminology?
Again, that's another big, deep question. Yeah, mental health. It's yeah, we're getting better at using it. We're getting better at understanding the definition of it. Sometimes it still gets used in the wrong kind of way. But that's because people don't know any different, I think. But the education's getting out there then and now. I think maybe if I go back to maybe 2017 it was quite a dramatic year for me. So during that period, I was working as a health and safety trainer. And I was working closely with the construction industry teaching brand new people coming into the industry, supervisors, managers, directors, and things like that. Whilst I was off work for the that 6-month sabbatical I was telling you about, one of the accredited bodies that I was training for, they'd put mental health into the syllabus on their kind of standard courses, and there was standard mental health training on these courses. And I used to use that as a question to the group, and I'd say, right, who's got mental health? And only one or two of the chaps would put their hands up. Or maybe one man would very tentatively put his hand up in the air, and it'd be like, right, okay, what about the rest of you then? So nobody else has got mental health. Let's reframe that. Let's go with who's got physical health, and everybody would put their hand up. And that's, I think, nowadays when you ask it, people look at you the way I used to get looked at when I asked that physical health question. They say, well, everybody's got it, haven't they? Everybody's got mental health. It can be good or bad. So the education is getting out there, which is amazing to see. But I think well-being is probably a better way, because there's still that misunderstanding about mental health, that mental health is always negative. That there's always something wrong inside your kind of coping strategies that is going wrong, that causes you the issues. It can be triggered by anything, right? A down period in your life, depression, can be triggered by absolutely anything. We're coming to the end of the football season. In a few days' time, all Arsenal fans all over the world are going to be a bit depressed, aren't they? That's nothing to do with the makeup of their mind or anything. They're going to be feeling naturally depressed.
Yeah. It's
You're not an Arsenal fan, are you?
no, Stokes for my sins. So maybe I've been depressed since we've left the Prem, so about 10 years. Do you think the stigma around mental health is still there for men? You said the education's getting there, but do you think it's still there a bit?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I think it's always going to be there. The stigma is always going to be there, because when I say always, we've got a good few generations to go through before we totally eliminate this stigma. Working in the space as you do, we probably become a little bit excited about how much we're talking about. But what we've got to be clear about is we are working in this space. It's what we do. We do hear about it all the time. Now, as with one of my other hats on, I'm an ambassador for the construction industry charity. And I spend a lot of time on construction sites speaking in front of huge amounts of people. And the stigma is still there without a shadow of a doubt. Even when we're explaining to a man, a woman, somebody in the construction industry that the help is there, it's free, it's confidential and stuff like that, they're like, oh yeah, I'm not sure. I'm just not sure, because that stigma, that worry is still there. Now, where that is coming from, whether that's in relation to their job security, whether that's in relation to the kind of lad culture that exists in male-dominated industries. I'm not sure, but there is still a stigma around there. I think it's also reflected in the suicide rates as well. We haven't seen too much of a reduction, a growth, if any, especially in certain age groups amongst men, which, that tells me the stigma is still hugely out there.
Yeah, it's huge. You touched on two great points that I wanted to touch on. What needs to change in these male dominated industries, do you feel?
Again, huge question. I think we need to start educating a lot. I think the education needs to start a lot earlier than it does. You touched on the military earlier on. The military nowadays, in all of the training, they are. It's in the syllabus for basic recruits going through training. They have to spend well-being time. They are trained on resilience. They're trained on good coping strategies and stuff like that. And they're encouraged to speak out. MHFA England, for example, they've developed an armed forces specific course, developed specifically for the armed forces. So education around everything is absolutely paramount. I think it needs to start at a very younger level, and this is why I think the generational aspect. We are a few generations away from totally eliminated, if we ever do. So education. We've got to get away from the putting posters up on the back of toilet doors. What's that all about? Do you know what I mean? When's that ever? Yeah, it's a great marketing strategy and all that kind of stuff, but we've got to be doing this. And not just this, we've got to be physically connecting with people, and that's what I think needs to change. We need to create physical connection and communities where trust is key. And we can still have the banter, and we can still have the laughs and the jokes, but we've got to have this trust and this face-to-face, actual, real-world communication.
My biggest concern is that men's mental health is becoming popular and used more of a marketing tool rather than for good. And I think that's my hope, is that it gets people talking more, but two, it isn't used as a marketing tool and is used on like events and things like that, rather than, like you say, crap posters in crappers, essentially, which is where we're currently at. If you don't mind, are we okay to talk about your dealings with suicide and your suicidal thoughts? Is that okay?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I can talk about them. I'll give you a warning. No, a trigger warning. I hate trigger warnings, but I sometimes touches a bruise when I'm talking about it. I may shed a tear, and if I do, I'm okay with that. It's one of the great healing things about talking about stuff like that. Is it lets me release some emotions that I do still bottle up from time to time. So yeah, just to warn you, if you do get uncomfortable with seeing a big fat bald bloke cry, then now's the time to walk away.
Time to turn off. So maybe let's start with the build-up, because that's usually more important than the actual break, shall we say. So talk us through that sort of build-up to the attempt.
So I'm a bit of a serial kind of suicide attempter, I suppose. I live with a condition called bipolar disorder, which was diagnosed in 2008. And because I'm a bloke, and because there's no education, and because I didn't really care too much, I never really changed anything. So I was taking medication, stuff like that. So bipolar is I get periods of mania, and I get periods of intense depressive episodes, usually about 2 of each per 12-month period. Although it's been a bit sketchier lately. So 2012 was the year that I came out of the military. 2012 was the year that I was going to make it in the civilian world. I was going to go off and get into the events industry. That was my dream. Go off and run events and put events on all across the world. Make sure the logistics were done and all that kind of stuff. That was what I really wanted to do. So I applied for a job on a small event that was happening in London at the time. I'm not sure if you remember a little event that was in London in 2012.
It's a little small one, yeah.
So the Olympics. Applied for this job, right? First ever job interview, first ever kind of civilian job application, and I absolutely nailed it. I got offered this amazing position with the Olympics. So that was 2012. I was coming out of the military. I remember standing outside the coffee shop in Romsey, beautiful kind of spring day, and my phone started ringing, and it was a London number. So I answered it, and it was the lady from the London organising committee of the Olympic Games. And I said, "Oh, brilliant! I'm so glad you called. I've been waiting to hear from you. You haven't sent me my reporting date, my kind of joining instructions or anything like that yet." And she said, "Oh yeah, about that, we've withdrawn the offer of employment." I mean, like a month and a bit ago, I'd been on the 24th floor of the Barclays Tower, looking out over this place where I was going to be working and my events industry career was going to start. And then she said, "Yeah, we've withdrawn the offer of employment." And I said, "Say that again." She said, "Yeah, you're not coming to work for us anymore." My obvious question was why. She said, "We don't have to tell you why. Goodbye," essentially. And literally, this phone call was over and done with in about a minute. And I stood there and I was like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" Now, my resilience at the time was pretty good. I just come out of the military. That was my first ever job interview. We kind of learn from our experiences, don't we? So I thought, yeah, it can't be that hard. I've just nailed this amazing job. Even though they're not giving it to me for whatever reason, it's not going to be that difficult to get a new worthwhile kind of career. So off I went and started applying for roles. I started applying for jobs, maybe 10 or 15 the first week, then maybe 20 or 30 the next week. And yeah, it just started going downhill. Now, financially, everything's really good. When I came out, when anybody comes out of the military, certainly from my era, the pension scheme is really good, and you're in receipt of your monthly pension from the day you leave. It gets paid. You get a big lump sum and a monthly income. So financially, everything's absolutely fine. But when you've worked in the military for 22 years, you've got up every single morning. You've had a purpose, and that was the bit I was really struggling with. The further away I was going from the camp gates, if you like, and not having anything to see, I was just a bloke. And not just that, I was a bloke that was unemployed. All right, I've got the money in the bank and stuff, but I had no purpose, and that started to really get me down. So I really started kind of doubling down my efforts to get a job, and I was applying for jobs with everything. It started off, I was applying for really kind of management kind of positions, so that was like commensurate with the roles that I'd been doing in the military and my skill set. And when I wasn't successful with them, I was applying for absolutely everything. I don't think there was any jobs in the local area that I didn't apply for. Applying at supermarkets, I was applying for 0-hour contract jobs, call centre jobs, you name it. I was applying for these jobs, and every time it was no. I was hearing phrases like, "You're overqualified," or "Sorry, you don't fit the candidate profile," and all these kind of things. But I was getting so much more demoralised. And then, I was just going down. I started convincing myself that I was a burden to my family, to my friends, to society. I just convinced myself that I was giving nothing to anybody, which was the beginning of that kind of suicide plan. I'd sit and watch the family get up and go to school and college and work and stuff, and like dread them coming back in at the end of the day, because I wasn't dreading them coming home because of the connection and stuff like that. I was dreading the questions and the talking. Picture the scene when you're coming from school or work or wherever you've been. "Hello, how are you? What have you been up to today?" And that's coming back, don't you? Yeah. So I couldn't tell them I'd been planning my suicide. I couldn't tell them that I'd been sitting on the sofa crying my eyes out, or standing on a bridge looking over a bridge. I couldn't talk about things like that. That just wasn't stuff that was there. So I was just going down. But what I did then was, I planned the end of my life, and I planned I didn't want the next year to start with me in it, so I chose. I think this goes some way to explain the rationality in my brain, like the way my brain was functioning. I chose the quiet week between Christmas and New Year to end my life because, do you know what I mean? Nothing ever happens then. That was, and I chose it. I chose it purposely. I was like, right, that's when it's going to be. There's nothing ever goes on there. That's got to be the time it was doing. And I didn't even think about Christmas. I didn't think about New Year. I never even thought of the effect that, like, the John Lewis advert might have on friends and family if I'd gone through and I'd actually died. Like, that's when does that come out? That starts in bloody October time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I never even contemplated that. I just convinced myself that the world would be a better place without me because I was giving nothing. I wasn't really taking anything either, but I felt like I was. I had just no role in society. So yeah, that was it. Off I went and performed the deed, which obviously it didn't work because I wouldn't be sitting here now. But then it kind of did work, but didn't. It was yeah. There was a few kind of lessons learned from it. I remember performing the act that was supposed to end my life. So in the lead up, and then this, I don't know how. Like, again, this is rationality. So Christmas, my plan was give the family the best Christmas ever, which I was able to do financially, obviously because of the pension, all that kind of stuff, and the time to plan it. So that became a focus. Once Christmas is over, that's it. I'm kind of out of here. So the day that I'd chosen to end my life, rather than giving everybody a hug and telling them I loved them and doing all that kind of stuff, the reason I felt I couldn't do that was because they would think that something was wrong, because that's not how I was behaving. And believe me, I was an emotional wreck that day. So I remember walking around the house, and I remember just creating this atmosphere and creating an argument and basically being told to get out. And that's what I did. It kind of worked. And I walked out of the house and slammed the door, and that was supposed to be the last image of me alive. And then looking back at that on reflection, it was like, how cruel was that? How cruel was that? Because I've created this argument, I've created that environment where I'm going to go now and leave, and then maybe there's going to be 3 or 4 people that are thinking, is it because of that argument? And I never even occurred to me that would be a kind of knock-on effect from it. But I went out and sat in this place in the forest and just cried. I cried for hours. I weighed up everything. I didn't want to die. I know I didn't want to die, but I was weighing up the reasons to live, and I couldn't find the reasons to live. That was the strange thing. And I think that sums up my suicide journey. Is I didn't actually ever want to die. Yeah. I couldn't see any reason to live, which, when you say them together, they do sound different. But sometimes when you say them, they sound exactly the same, don't they? So yeah, that was it. I think when I performed the act that was going to end my life, and I've heard people talk about this in the past as well, is I had this feeling like the clouds that were like blocking my judgment for all these periods of time. Those kind of voices that were telling me I was shit, these voices that are telling me the reasons, the ones that I was arguing with like minutes before I did what I did, they all just disappeared. They shut up, and everything clouded. All the clouds had cleared, the curtains had drawn, everything has gone, and I really didn't want to die. So yeah, I spent that next probably about 12 hours, I think, just like keeping myself awake, because I knew if I fell asleep, there's no way I was going to survive what I'd done. So yeah, I was yeah, I think that's where my military training came in then, just keeping myself moving. Yeah, crawling around a frozen car park in the New Forest at 2 o'clock in the morning, when I say crawling, yeah, it wasn't crawling like a baby crawls lovingly towards its mother. I was dragging myself across the ground like a soldier under fire. Yeah, it was all I could do to keep moving. So yeah, But then here comes a big mistake. A big mistake, but again, part of the learning process was, so I was on all kinds of medication. When I came out of the hospital after that period of treatment again, I knew better than the doctors. I knew better than all these professionals that were telling me what I needed to do and stuff. And my thinking was they were supposed to stop me from finding myself in the forest, not put me there.
Yeah.
So I binned everything. I binned the absolute lot, and then reverted to type. I got a job very quickly because I was so grateful for getting this job, and because of my military kind of upbringing. In the military, you get paid 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so they can send you wherever they want to send you at whatever time they want to send you, and you carry on that kind of work ethic into civilian life.
Yeah.
But what I'd also noticed was people that I aspired to be like in civilian life, when you ask them, and you say, "How are you?" They say, "Yeah, I'm good," or "I'm fine," or whatever. And they always follow it up with, "I'm busy." And that's what I thought I had to be successful, and to be a bloke was busy. I mean, what's that all about? What's that all about?
It's a strange one. Well, thank you for sharing. It's always good to hear from someone, and it's a tough conversation. You talked about purpose, and my question is, do you think you can find purpose away from work? And if so, how do you find it?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You know, one of my key questions, right? I've got two questions I ask everybody. Is the first one is, tell me who you are, and that's what the whole conversation is based around at the Man Gang. We start up with that question: tell me who you are right here, right now. Don't care what your job is, don't care what your name is, don't even care where you live, anything like that. Tell me who you are right now. And what we're basically trying to do is pull out of people exactly what you're feeling in that moment. So the purpose question, the purpose, I think we might mix that up a little bit with aims and procedures and visions and things like that, because my purpose right now is to talk to you, with the objective to maybe educate somebody, maybe to encourage somebody to lift up the phone. When we finish this podcast, my purpose will switch. The two dogs that have been on very good behaviour, they're due to go out for a word beginning with W. My purpose will then become looking after those dogs. But yeah, long-term purpose, I think, is to be the best that I can be for myself. And that sounds selfish, but unless I'm the best I can be for me, then I can't do the best for other people. And I think that's my purpose in life. So whatever I find myself doing in 10 years' time, I will strive to be the best I can be at it.
I like the word selfish. Do you think men need to be more selfish?
Absolutely. Absolutely, we do. We've got to stop being people pleasers. We've got to learn how to say no. We've got to make sure that we can look after ourselves, because we've got to give ourselves what we need, right? We can't give to somebody else if we're not giving it to ourselves first.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's the biggest. I think it's one of the biggest problems is people pleaser. You have the weight of a million people on those shoulders, which isn't necessarily the right thing. So yeah, Andy, in your opinion, what's needed more of, or what's needed to change in the men's space and the mental health space to encourage men to talk, or a reduction in the negative side of mental health?
So I think, and this is very personal to me. I never realised the space, and I think you picked up on this earlier on in one of the comments that you made about it becoming a marketing strategy and that kind of stuff. There are amazing people and amazing organisations that are working in this space and are very active in this space, doing fantastic things. Often very, very small. Some are very, very big. But there's a lot of great work, and it's being done in silos. there seems to be almost a, it's my kind of, it's my baby, you ain't having any part of it kind of thing. I think we've got to get rid of all that, and we've got to realise what the fundamental aim of working in this space is all about, and that's to promote positive well-being, positive mental health, and provide support and that where it's needed. And I think to do that, we've got to start collaborating. We've really got to start working together, promoting each other's services, and it's something that I pride myself on. If Lewis, if you wanted to start a men's group tomorrow, whether you want to call it Man Gang, whether you want to call it Lewis's Laugh a Lot group or whatever, do you know, whatever you want to call it, if I've got anything that can help you, mate, you're welcome to it for free. I'll share the documents with you right here, right now, and that goes to anybody that wants to start something like a men's support group. I don't have a monopoly on it, but I don't want people to experience the loss of a loved one like I've experienced and like many other people do every single day. So if you're welcome to have what I've got, if it'll help us towards that aim.
It's definitely bigger than a one-man job. I think that's fair to say. I completely agree with that. It's I've actually met the other side of that. I've met someone who thinks that they're going to solve it all by themselves, which was funny.
Well, very best of luck to them. Very best of luck to them, but it's not going to happen. Do you know, mate? We'll all make mistakes, and it's all part of a journey, right? And purpose and stuff like that. When I first started being an ambassador for the construction industry, for the Lighthouse charity, and going out onto these construction sites, I was getting such great feedback from the talks. I was speaking to people, like 5 or 6 people after a talk, would come up and say, "Oh, mate, have you got a minute? Can you help with this? Can the charity help with this?" And I thought I'd cured suicide. Do you know what I mean? I was like, I've cured this. This is it. Brilliant. I was really, and this was very early on. I'm so glad I'm so glad it happened. I wish it never happened, but it happened at exactly the right time. I got a phone call from somebody that I'd done a talk for and spent some time on a construction site with, and he said, "Andy, I don't know what to do. One of our blokes killed themselves last night." And I was like, "Whoa!" And we went through the conversation, and we were having the conversation about it and all the natural kind of questions that were happening. And then I had this thing. I was like, I remember his name. I can picture the man. He was on that talk, and that was almost like a wake up call. I've got to double down on the effort to get out there. Yeah. But also, what I've got to realise is I ain't going to reach everybody doing what I'm doing. I might not have been the right person for that man to listen to that day, which is. Again, it was very early days of that kind of campaign. We've now got 9 people and 9 different people with 9 different stories. So there is something there that hopefully everybody can relate to. But that really was a big wake up call. And I don't think we're ever going to eliminate suicide. Suicide's always going to be a thing. I think we need to break it down into stages. We need to see a reduction. I think we need to see parity between male suicide and female suicide. I think that's got to be a kind of target, and I think a downwards kind of parity. I don't want females to come up suddenly start coming up and an increase in female suicide. You know, I just like it to be a parity. I think is something we need to aim for.
I think the really nice way to sum that up is you're not going to resonate with everyone is really important. Like there needs to be essentially everyone needs a voice. All 4 billion men need a voice because you're going to have these sort of back and forths. Andy, just to sort of finish off, are you able to sort of let people know where you are or where to find you if they resonated with you or, like you say, want to start one of these groups themselves?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, quite active on LinkedIn. You can find me on there. My name's Andy Bishop. There's also a page on there dedicated to the Man Gang. So just search for Man Gang UK. And you can have a look on our website, mangang.org. And all the links and everything to all our socials, the ways to get in touch with us are all on there. And if you are in the Hampshire area and you do fancy a trip out, we meet every Wednesday from 6:30. Locations again on the website. And we have a walk and talk meeting on on a Saturday, and we're also involved in a huge project which is going to be seeing 2,000 men. I'm not going to say dancing, but they are dancing. 2,000 men moving in a coordinated manner in Southampton in 2026. And it's already working. It's all about connecting men, banishing loneliness, getting men connected and giving them a little bit of purpose. And that's called the Big Movement Project. So, yeah, get on my socials to follow that.
Thank you for your time, Andy. It's greatly appreciated, and thanks for sharing your story.